Good evening and welcome to our regular scheduled board meeting. We're thankful and happy that you are present. At this time, we will have our roll call.
Mr. Alexander?
Present.
Mrs. Baylor?
Here.
Mr. Bravo?
Here.
Mrs. Lasher?
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Reverend Walker?
Present.
And we welcome our student board member, Kyrese Brunson from East CLC.
At this time, we will be led in our Pledge of Allegiance by our student board member, Kyrese Brunson from East CLC.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are also happy this evening to have newly elected board members, and Valerie McKittrick, N.J. Akbar, and Derek Hall. We're grateful for your presence, and you're having the time to sit around the table and to observe the meeting, and then we'll have a couple of other items that we'll present to you to put on your schedule so that we continue to grow and nurture and get to know each other so that we can move forward to do the work that is upon us as a school board. So thank you for your presence tonight. This time we have any community school reflections.
Don't everyone start at once, but you know, our own superintendent received the Dave Liebert Award, and that was a phenomenal event. It was very creative how they presented it. We were all part of the classroom as the audience, and it was very interactive, and it had funny parts, sad parts, or emotional. Sad for some, good sad, but it was really a great event, and what an honor for our own superintendent to receive such an award here in the city of Akron. So you all can chime in as you do.
Okay, Patrick.
Yeah, and just adding to that, I mean, it really was a well-deserved award, and it's a community leaders, it's a visionary award. And so how appropriate for our superintendent to be recognized for all the work that he's done, but also just a quick shout out and kudos to our very own Lisa Mansfield, who serves on that committee along with Dan Zampelli and others to put that event together. Very well done, very funny, and thanks for including us to be a part of that. And I know our my colleagues around the table are going to have things to say about the conference. Really enjoyed this year's conference. Our very own Dr. Reverend Curtis T. Walker was recognized by the president of the Black Caucus while we were there for the Black Caucus dinner on Sunday night, and so we got to see him shine, and she was very gracious in what she had to say about you, and we appreciate all that you've done, not only for us and our students, but certainly for the caucus and for OSBA and for the students across Ohio, so thank you for that. Also, our very own Kenya Harrington. Several of us attended a leadership session that talked about leadership and the qualities of a leader and what it takes to be a leader. It was a very interactive session, and I know some of our folks that came down that will be joining us too in January. NJ was in that session. And Lisa, we had a good time, and Kenya did very well. So kudos to him, and I will yield the balance of my time to the rest of my colleagues here. I know there's a lot to talk about.
Okay, Ms. Mansfield.
Thank you, Patrick, for that shout out. I want to continue that by recognizing some of the staff and hoping that Mr. James doesn't give them pink slips for being so helpful, because he did threaten them with it. There would have been no event without Deb Volk, and that shouldn't surprise anyone who's in this room. Whenever they would ask me, can we do this, can we do that, I'm like, I'm not doing anything without Deb Volk. That's all there is to it. Huge thanks to Carla Chapman, to Ryan for helping answer questions about David, to Ellen for helping. Her acting was spot on, so that was a lot of fun too on the big screen. To Don Wilson for helping us get folks, the Firestone cheerleaders, for the costumes, there were so many things that came into play that would not have happened had it not been for the staff that sits around this table and for those out in the district. Continuing along those lines, in addition to Kenya's OSBA session, I did have the chance to go to the one that was how do you translate success, that was done by our folks over at Finley with Sherry Bevington and that team, and Lo Dang Win, and it was just a fantastic session. I got to stay for about 3/4 of it. I had to leave, but I heard it even got better when I left, and I hate that, but just such a great job. And watching people's faces as they talked about Finley was priceless to me as well. The statistics just stagger people, I think, and what we're doing there is amazing. Really interesting session by Dr. Eric Merkel, who did one Give and Toke, the medical marijuana in schools, which was very catchy as well. And then I really enjoyed, which should be no surprise, the Laura Linney session, where she focused on the arts and on liberal arts education, and how we need to also remember keeping those classics, keeping those pieces, because that is the connection for so many people. But I will say the highlight of the last 2 weeks was when I got to have lunch with this young man, and huge thanks to Kyrie's for meeting with me at East, and he's going to catch us up on what he's been doing. But I'll tell you what, just a fantastic young man, and our student school board is top notch. And I think next year we really should present on the work that we are doing with that. And Dreama is just fantastic and sat with us and helped encourage questions and answers. So nice to have you here, sir. And thanks for having lunch with me. He didn't think I was too uncool to have lunch with. So
Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Kyrie Brunson, and I'm a junior at ECLC. On Saturday, November 16th, this past Saturday, the East MC JROTC, or the Marine Corps Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, hosted a drill meet in honor of a deceased Marine by the name of Derek A. Wyatt. He was shot and killed while on active duty in Afghanistan. Derek Wyatt was born, I forget when. I have to look at that, but he was a graduate from ECLC in 2004, and he served as a member of the Presidential Guard for President Bush. Also at this past drill meet, there was approximately 400 people present, and 250 of those were cadets. For those who don't know, a drill meet is a competition where schools that represent different branches of the military come to perform in drill-related events. And drill is a movement of a unit to another in a orderly, coordinated fashion. The following high schools participated: Ambridge from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania; Buchtel from Akron, Ohio; Ellett from Akron, Ohio; Euclid from Euclid, Ohio; Grove City from Columbus, Ohio; Highland from Grafton, Ohio; Midview from Medina, Ohio; Parkersburg from Parkersburg, West Virginia; and James Ford Rhodes from Cleveland, Ohio. And the main goal of this drill meet is to have cadets compete at a high level amongst the best JROTC programs in the Northeastern region. ECLC's JROTC is ranked in the top 10% in the nation, gaining the title of National Honor School for our JROTC. And Akron Public Schools Portrait of a Graduate describes Akron Public Schools graduates as having strong habits of mind, social skills, real-world skills, plans for the future, and making a contribution to society. As a cadet, I exhibit strong habits of mind. For example, I demonstrate collaboration by coming together with the platoon commanders to make sure every cadet is prepared for each event. I lead the cadets by making sure they know my plan of execution and what will be needed for that plan. And lastly, I always try my hardest to communicate effectively to make sure the cadets understand that they need to be calm, prepared, determined, and focused. All parts of the Portrait of a Graduate can be instilled by the Marine Corps JROTC. I'm also a member of the Marching and Concert Band, Jazz Band, Choir, Honor Choir, Barbershop Quartet, and Vocal Jazz Group. Also this past week, I was accepted into Kent State University's All-Star Band. Also, my belief is that all students across Akron Public Schools have the abilities to be successful. Successful students have programs such as JROTC, the fine arts, and instructors who are caring, like my JROTC instructor, Master Sergeant John McLean, to assist in culminating and developing their skills. Hopefully, by hearing these words, you are all inclined to visit ECLC and witness our amazing JROTC program.
Any other board member wants to share after that?
I don't know. I think I should have went before him. I don't have a whole lot, but I did a great job. Good job.
Thank you.
And congratulations. I also went to OSBA, and there were several sessions we went to. Of course, mine was a lot focused on equity, and the superintendent, our president, and others were there as well in those sessions. And I think it was a lot of information that was given out in regards to equity. And talking about a deeper dive, there was a panel that talked about equity, and they were really good, and especially the one young lady from Houston, Texas, who was very good, who's a guru probably when it comes to equity. And Mr. Akbar was also in that session, but there was a good session, always good session when it talks about equity, because when we talk about equity, we're talking about giving our kids what they need to succeed in our school district, which is the most important thing, our students. And saying that, we also had, when we were at the state conference, our cheerleaders from Firestone High School were down at the Student Achievement Fair, and they were talking about the college and career academies and how they juggle their schedules, being a cheerleader, being maybe an AP, being in other classes and in other parts of the school organizations that they have an opportunity to participate in, but how they juggle that so people can understand how that worked. And I also had opportunity to go to Cleveland Clinic Akron General, where some of our students from ECLC were there, and they got a chance to meet with various individuals throughout the hospital. And the one that I actually kind of stayed in is cardiac rehab, where they came in, they talked to everybody when they first started, but they branched off, but they went into what they do with cardiac rehab. And I kind of stayed there because that's where my daughter is. She's an exercise physiologist in cardiac rehab, but it was interesting, and the kids had a lot of questions. I thought that was very, very good at what we're doing now in our academies, are getting our kids out to see what goes on in these actual fields, because the kids had some good questions. They did a good job, and the staff there were pleased. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yes.
And I'll very quickly add my congratulations to Dr. James. It's just a fantastic event, and thank you to everybody who was part of that. I didn't get a chance to go to OSB. I had a sick kid at home, but they actually have a lot of their content on their mobile app, which is really nice. So I got to leaf through several different presentations, so it seemed like a fantastic kind of event. But also wanted to mention that a couple Fridays from now, they're putting on the Levy event, where they can actually, lots of board members throughout the state can go and visit to understand more about what a levy looks like, what does it mean, kind of the do's and don'ts of campaigns, which could be really important for us to understand here in the next few years. So thank you very much, and congratulations again, Dr. James.
Thank you. And we're going to talk about school levies in a little bit. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. We want to, again, one of the things about the Ohio School Board Association's annual meeting, where we have many, many workshops, and a lot of us participated. We were really grateful that Akron Public Schools was highlighted, as has already been mentioned, and a lot of the actual teaching workshops. We need to do more. We have so much that we can offer and show to the other school districts. One of the things that we talk about at NSBA, we talk about at CUBE, Council on Urban Boards of Education, that we talk about at OSBA, is trauma. And one of the sessions for the first time, when they talked about trauma, really hit home on how they explained it, the council person from one of our districts. And he used his fist, and it's a medical term for both of the parts of the brain, but he used his fist. Your thumb, he said, is the barking dog. And as long as that dog is barking, you can't get anything done, because that means that thumb represents fear and flight. And as long as you're running, as long as you're afraid, you can't hear or take anything in. And then when that barking dog is hushed and the rest of your fingers come down, that's called the wise owl. That calms the thumb, the barking dog, helps you to reason, helps you to relate, helps you to calm down, so you're able to learn and grow. So we don't want to keep that barking dog. We've seen too many things in society and in our schools where the dog is barking and nothing gets done. We want to see the rest of those fingers cover that dog so that what we get is work that's being done and lessen the trauma that's affecting teachers, students, staff, et cetera. So that was an interesting workshop and one that hits home every day in all of our school systems when our children come in with trauma from wherever that trauma is, or they meet teachers that have gone through trauma, wherever that trauma might be. So we have to work hard to make sure we quiet down the barking dog. Okay. And again, we want to congratulate Ginger Baylor as councilperson-elect.
Thank you.
Thank you for your services that you've continue and to render on the Akron School Board. Any other comments, colleagues? At this time, we do have individuals who desire to speak to the board, and we have two individuals, Sheila Smith and Cassell Smith. Sheila Smith, a former school board member, and Cassell Smith, a former county council person. You have 3 minutes to address the board. You are not to call persons any by name, otherwise we need to go into executive session for that. And Mr. Pendleton will be the timekeeper. Yes, sir. And please, as much as possible, speak into the mic.
Statement of concern, Cassell M. Smith Sr., 1191 Dover Avenue, November 18th, 2019. I am a resident in the Bookville cluster. My youngest daughter wanted to attend Bookville. So she participated in open enrollment. She enjoyed her years at Bookville, graduating the valedictorian. I am a graduate of South High. Although South and Bookville were rivals, I adopted Bookville. I was the chairperson of the Volunteer and Parent Involvement Committee. We launched programs such as going to school with your children and attending their classes. Parent involvement always makes a positive impact on learning and quality education. As a resident of the Bookville cluster, I would like to always remain positive and supportive of quality education. It's been years since I have had to address the Akron Board of Education. Previously, I came to the board because of the inadequacies of the Akron plan to decommission schools and reassign pupils. After a 4-year battle, inclusive of a lawsuit, Bell versus the Akron Board of Education, some inadequacies were remedied. This is the 40th year of that glorious victory. I also addressed the board several times under the auspices of the Akron Branch NAACP as the president from 1979 to 1983 and as the chair of the Education Committee. I now want to address the board regarding the prospective vacancy that will soon be on the Akron Board of Education. Hopefully, the rumors that are out there will not come to fruition. I want to just say I have been supportive of the Akron Board of Education. I would like to continue. However, if I see some shenanigans, this 70-year-old man still has some fight in him. I want to thank you for your leadership and hope that we can continue to strive for quality education as partners. Together, we can do it.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Smith?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would first want to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I am here also to speak to the upcoming Akron Board of Education vacancy. As a former member of the Akron School Board, I've sat where you sit tonight, contemplating what is the best candidate to fill a vacancy and what is best for the district. I've had the difficult task to vote in favor of removing a member from a seat and also filling a seat after that decision. What the individual was accused of did not carry with it an ethical violation per se, but the perception of the matter did not represent the best interests of the district and the community. However, in regard to the November 5th, 2019 election results of the school board candidates, a candidate who received 8,553 votes, the fourth highest votes received from the people, deserves an opportunity to represent those same people. Obviously, the message of the Fresh Voice campaign resonated with the people. Anything less of the appointment will represent disregard of the will of the people. I definitely understand that policy and procedures are written for the purpose of order. However, Akron School Board policy is somewhat vague, but carries with it board member discretion. My ask tonight is that you do the right thing. I love to make quotes, and I got this quote from Chris Frizzell, a former U.S. Navy SEAL, and the quote was this: "There's a difference between doing things right and doing the right thing." Secondly, I'd like to address the board regarding an urgent matter at Bookville CLC. The staffing situation at Bookville is in dire need of attention. I've heard numbers of 20, 27, 12, all kind of numbers of long-term subs. But this is one letter that I got from a parent today, informing her that her child has been assigned or been taught for 4 or more consecutive weeks by a teacher who does not meet applicable state certification or licensure requirements at the grade level and subject area which the teacher has been assigned. This is a travesty and a disservice to this community and our children. In addition, you all know the historical perspective of Bookville. We've had revolving doors of principals. If you really want success, you will do what is necessary to build and support success. And I'm asking you, we need an emergency meeting at Bookville High School, or CLC. I got to get the term. I was here some years ago. It's the CLC. We need a meeting because desperate times call for desperate measures. Thank you this evening.
Thank you. Your response or your sharing to the board had 2 items, and the last portion of the items comes under the direction of the superintendent. So we will get back to you about that item to be able to make whatever adjustment that we need to make on that. Thank you. Would ask that if our student representative would stand by the podium, and if Mark Williamson would take a photo. We didn't do that earlier. This time, as we continue with our board meeting, we have communications, a presentation by our Human Resources Update, Recruitment and Retention. And everyone is welcome to stay if you can. If not, we understand if your time does not allow you to stay.
Hey, Joanne. Thank you so much. Good evening, board members and audience. Tonight, we'd like to present to you an update from our Human Resources Department in the areas of recruitment and retention. Before I get started, though, I would like to acknowledge and recognize my staff members who are in the back of the room even though you were asked to move up front, but if you guys could just stand and wave and just be recognized, I would appreciate it. All of you, I just appreciate your being here and for your support this evening. And Todd Wamis right here, a member of our department, and with me tonight to present is Dr. Erica Glover, our Manager of Recruitment and Retention, and Julian Foster, who is our Human Resources Specialist. As you know, our district focus is to be the #1 urban school system in the United States. The foundation of our district focus includes skilled employees. Our presentation this evening will focus on that portion of our district focus. In human resources, our mission is to recruit, retain, and support a high-performing, diversified staff to ensure college and career readiness for all students. I show you our mission statement to make it clear what I and my staff look to achieve as the Human Resources Department for Akron Public Schools. You will see evidence of working toward this goal as we present this to you this evening. During this presentation, we will focus on the work of our department in order to help you get a better understanding of our work and our mission toward recruiting, retaining, and supporting a high diversified staff. As it relates to personnel and placement, this slide shows the quantity of specific work done in our department. For example, from January of 2019 to the present, we have interviewed 852 individuals for various positions in the district. For the 2018-19 school year and through the current date, there have been over 1,000 new hires, promotions, and or reassignments. 211 teacher transfers were also completed. We processed over 1,200 supplemental contracts, and we also had 526 resignations and or retirements. I show this not only to share the high numbers, but also to highlight some of the factors that contribute to our hiring practices. On this slide, you will see that there are a number of factors that impact our work. This year, with the full implementation of college and career academies across the district at all of our high schools, created a large number of career ed positions. A difficult area to fill positions because many of those candidates come from private industry and not your typical educational background. We also had a number of hard-to-fill positions, and those were in the areas of special education, science, math, and foreign language. These are typically hard-to-fill positions not only in the state of Ohio, but nationwide as well. Factored into this is also the number of reassignments, promotions, and resignations. We had a number of special ed teachers this year who transferred into regular ed positions. We had some who were promoted into other positions and administrative positions within the district. And in late summer, we had several who also resigned from the district, creating additional openings on top of the openings that we already had. As you may know, there is a national teacher shortage. According to the Economic Policy Institute, written in April 2019, the number of individuals actively on track to pursue a career in teaching has significantly declined, and kids in high poverty schools are getting hit hardest by the teacher shortage. We face this fact, but we don't settle. We continue to work toward our goal of hiring and retaining high quality educators. You each have an article about this at your table. And with that goal of hiring and retaining a high-quality educators is a parallel goal of closing the gap so that our teacher population more closely represents our student population. As you can see, the percentage of minority teacher averages in Ohio is 7.6%. We are above that average at 10%, and we strive to exceed that. How does our work continue to set this as a priority? I will now turn it over to Dr. Glover for further information.
We set this as a priority through an intentional focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Research suggests that it is critical that our students are able to see teachers who look like them so that they can envision themselves as teachers. By further developing our strategy specific to minority teacher recruitment, we are not only able to expose our students to diverse perspectives and cultures, but we are also ensuring that our recruiting and hiring practices are both equitable and inclusive. To this end, we strive for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our minority recruitment strategies are aligned with the district's equity plan. The equity plan is updated yearly in collaboration with Director of Community Relations. The vision will look familiar to you as the components mirror that of our HR mission statement. In alignment with the equity plan vision, our #1 goal is to increase the population of minority teacher candidates. Let me take some time to elaborate on some of our work toward that goal. On the left of the screen, you will see the items we shared with you at our last board presentation that support recruiting and retaining minorities. HBCU is a website we showed you in the past, but there is information on your table if you would like a refresher on that initiative. I've also put on your table information about CAMRA. If you recall, only 20 districts can have a membership for CAMRA. After a 2-year wait, we are now able to benefit from the resources of this program. The Educator Rising work has expanded, is being further developed as we now have a college and career pathway that can support this avenue. I will talk a bit more about this shortly, which will be in the Grow Our Own portion of the presentation. We continue to strengthen and implement all of these tools, but we aren't stopping there. In order to reach our goal, we continue and will continue to look for ways to increase the number of minority teachers. The one way that I want to focus on that is new this year is a Human Capital Grant. The Human Capital Grant was offered by the Ohio Department of Education in order to ensure a steady talent pool of highly effective teachers and leaders. ODE recognizes the need at the state level to address the educator career continuum. Take a look at their priority areas for the Human Capital Grant. These priorities are in direct alignment with our goals. With the superintendent's support, as well as that of Carla Chapman, Karen Gijic, Peggy Greiner, Ryan Pendleton, and the HR department, we were quick to apply for this grant. This month, we were one of the 17 districts in Ohio awarded this grant. We received $50,000 to be used over the course of 1 year. So what was our proposal and what are our plans for these grant monies? Our focus is in 3 areas, all pertaining to the recruitment and hiring of minority teachers. Some of these areas are not new, but are building on the structures we already have in place or are developing. First, the alternative license. We plan to use the Human Capital Strategies grant funding to transition 6 substitute teachers into full-time classroom teaching positions with a goal of concentrating recruitment efforts on substitutes who are minorities. In a partnership with Ashland University, we will provide program participants individualized coursework and supports as they work towards obtaining their alternative resident educator licenses. This program, which has already seen success in the form of a pilot, could be replicated within schools across the state. Second, the supplemental license allows educators with a current valid standard teaching certificate or license to teach in a supplemental area while they are in the process of obtaining standard licensure for that area. We are looking to develop a pipeline of supporting licensed teachers and becoming SPED teachers through the supplemental license route. This pipeline adds a layer of support for staffing specific to SPED positions. Finally, Grow Our Own. Grow Your Own is developing and managing talent with the attentional staff who are already a part of your district. Our goal is to provide opportunities for high school seniors to hold positions as educational assistants. By targeting our students currently enrolled in education-related academies, you are able to further develop a sustainable pipeline of growing our own. Through partnerships with both 2-year and 4-year universities, our own high school graduates interested in the field of education will be able to attend a 2-year university, advance to a 4-year, and gain a degree in education. I will now turn things over to Julian, who will discuss other recruitment initiatives.
Thank you, Ms. Glover. So as you see, our recruitment initiatives consist of the following. First off is our job fairs. We are consistently and persistently seeking potential qualified candidates, whether traditional or non-traditional avenues. Second off is our campus interviews. In some cases, Akron Public Schools had the opportunity to request to speak to those college graduates that are going to graduate right before school ends. Third off is those question and answer sessions, which has been a great way to network and communicate and connect with our graduating students. Just this year, we had started a student-teacher feedback process in which our teachers can provide an in-depth feedback report and surveys that highlights our district focus, which is to prepare each child for success. Through all of these avenues discussed, just this past week, we've had the opportunity to target and secure 4 to 5 new December grads that will be a part of Akron Public Schools. Last but not least, we have integrated an innovative minority recruitment strategy, which I will share with you on our next slide. We are in the process of expanding our possibilities. That means teaming up and pipelining with community and minority organizations. With that being said, we've contacted various churches in the community, whether that meant speaking about possibilities during announcements, posting job opportunities on their job boards, or attending community functions. Just recently, we attended a church minority job fair, and we would like to keep that momentum going. We've also teamed up with the Akron Urban League. During this time, we are participating in workshops that hone in on inclusion, true value, equity, and at the same time, we're networking with community leaders who will help us get the word out about opportunities in education, and possibly job seekers who want to learn more about education, We have contacted and targeted 4 groups on our local university campuses that has helped us close the gap with minority recruitment. We first hone in on our athletes, because many athletes want to be coaches, and as we all know, coaching is a form of teaching. We've also gone into our multicultural centers and international clubs. We've also tapped into our fraternities and sororities in order to talk a little bit more about education. Last but not least, we've also talked to and tapped into our veterans. Just this past week, we participated in our Akron Veterans and Community Career Expo job fair. And during this time, we were able to network with various local American Legion posts. So as we look at these categories, we notice a direct relationship with pipelining and growing our own. So let's take another look at the human capital grant that Dr. Glover just recently showed. While this slide shows the priorities of those applying for the grant, it also shows the priorities that have been our focus even before we put in an application with ODE. Seeing this information reinforced that we're already on the right track with minority and urban recruitment. When we look at ODE's first qualification, which is diversify the pipeline of education, in APS we are building on our current strategies, such as developing partnerships with HBCUs and working with organizations such as CAMRA to focus on recruitment of minority educators. Additionally, we are using strategies such as alternative licensure pathway to provide alternative routes in becoming an educator. Our point number 2 that ODE has provided was establish strategies for retaining diverse educators. Well, at Akron Public Schools, we have a diverse pool of substitute teachers, in which 40% are minorities. Our goal is to capitalize on our substitute teaching pool by recruiting highly qualified minority candidates to participate in the alternative licensure pathway. Point number 3 that was provided was develop an educator rising program with the Institute of Higher Education. In APS, we are further developing our educator rising program by partnering with local 2-year and 4-year universities, so that our high school seniors interested in working in the field of education can apply to become educational assistants. This is a perfect opportunity for our students as an educational assistant to participate in tuition reimbursement. In fact, this year we have had a total of 4 educational assistants be promoted to full-time teachers as a result of the alternative license pathway. The fourth bullet point was create your own programs. In APS, we've already had programs in place such as Educators Rising, Great Teachers and Great Leaders, Inspiring Leaders. These programs are not just for teaching, but also for administration. On a side note, did you know that out of the 50 total minority administrator positions, 29 were former APS teachers? Just to name a few, and we only have a couple in this room. Just to name a few, we have Mark Black, and also we have Dr. Erica Glover. But there was others that are also on the list that just aren't here today as well. The 5th bullet point that we received was implement a LEAD program. In APS, we are using our equity plan to guide our work around minority recruitment and teacher retention. The equity plan allows us to have a clear focus specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Which brings us back to our mission and focus here in the Human Resources Department. I'm happy to have been given the time to share with you our strategies, initiatives, and work toward recruiting and retaining a high-quality, diversified staff to ensure college and career readiness for our students. I hope you see, as I do, that we are on track and we will continue to develop and expand our initiatives and look forward to innovative solutions as we work towards achieving our goals. At the present time, we have concluded our presentation. Thank you so much for listening to us, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
So at this time, board members, if you have any questions of any of the persons who made the presentation, we'll receive those at this time.
I just wanted to comment as well. We got to kind of have a roll-up-your-sleeve presentation of this in instructional policy. And one of the other things that I love the focus on our students and getting them ready and growing our own from within that way. But also the focus of those substitutes that you mentioned, education assistants. People come to Akron Public Schools and they stay. There are so many people in this room that have 20 years experience, 15 years experience, and they've been with us a really long time. They're committed, they know our system, but they don't have that clear pathway to becoming a teacher, and some of them want to. And so one of the things we really focused on was, how do we take those people that already know us, they know us the best, and how do we help to get teachers out of that? Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how other ways we're making that happen?
I know in the Office of Substitute Teaching, I periodically do get calls on, hey, how do I become a full-time teacher?
And if you would just lean a little bit.
I apologize.
Hearing you back there.
6'2".
My mic is not
Okay.
working.
Okay, please.
Okay.
All right.
So I
Thank you.
tried to project.
So with this new grant, it gives us that opportunity, especially with our substitute teachers that say, hey, Mr. Foster, this is awesome. I'm in here subbing. What can I do to be a full-time teacher? And with this grant, it gives us a pathway to kind of have that substitute teacher become a full-time teacher, or that educational assistant become a full-time teacher, so we can build upon that as well. So it's good conversation to have.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, with the local equitable access plan, can you explain that a little bit more and go a little more in depth of how that aspect of the recruitment and retention works?
So within our equity
If you would come to, I'm sorry, if you would come to the mic.
I was about to do that. So within our equity plan, there are specific areas. ODE has provided equity assessment that we use to kind of reflect and look at our district to make sure that we meet certain guidelines or criteria specific to provide equity. One of those being around minority recruitment, diversifying the teacher population. So through the equity assessment and what we found in terms of areas that we need to grow, we've been using that to kind of hone in on our focus. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, my mind is just still going, but you answered my question.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I
Yes.
want to know if this may not be totally relevant to what you're saying, but
You need to speak into the mic,
Oh.
Sister
God.
Baylor. Thank you.
At any time during this process, what's wrong with this thing?
It's not working either.
It still works.
At any time, on the front end, in the middle, or where you are today, was there any input, like from the community aspect, as to what they wanted to see in their minority or teachers, or, areas that they feel there should be some type of fulfillment, where there's a gap that they see that maybe some of the students or a large portion of them could benefit? I don't know if that was something that would be part of the conversation, but I would certainly think that that would be helpful with what you guys are doing. I know you're just trying to get your teachers there. You're trying to recruit minority teachers, but the inclusion, we've got to get this. We have to include everybody that cares and want to see good impact for our kids and for our district. So has that component been implemented, suggested?
Absolutely. That's the best part of the alternative licensure route. The alternative licensure route allows you to look at content area related fields. So individuals that don't necessarily have a degree or they have a degree in education are able to obtain opportunities to become teachers through that route. So let's say they graduated with a degree in business. Well, now we have career tech where they actually have an opportunity to become an educator. So our goal is, obviously, with our substitutes, they're coming from within a community. So we have additional opportunities for substitutes who could also, again, come in from the community to go through the alternative licensure pathway.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say, am I hearing that you're saying through those different educators or people who are interested in educating and taking it to the next level, that's where you're gaining your information and your knowledge as far as like a community voice? From my experiences, for example, as an administrator, there have been substitute of coming in and out of the building, not even knowing that they have access or opportunity to becoming educators, who literally live in a district or work in the school district or the area that they're working in, and they want to and they aspire to become teachers, and they just never knew of it. I myself was a long-term substitute teacher. So we are obviously talking to a lot of our candidates. We're looking at our applicants as well. When they come in and sub and we see that they have content area related things, we're talking to them about that to actively recruit them from the community to become educators. Do you think that you have done enough as far as getting the word out or communicating to enough people in the community?
Great question. So within the grant, we have written within the grant, it's part of the budget, to be able to market the opportunities related to the alternative licensure program for individuals in the community and within our system internally.
Yes. Miller?
And pardon my back, but I thought it was interesting. I remember speaking when I came back from Cube, and there was a high school, it was a school district in Texas who mentioned how they use coaching as a recruitment tool, and I'm not going to be absolutely correct on the statistics, but I thought that high school district it's 70% minorities in the classrooms because in part of that recruitment tool. I'm wondering, I saw we have 10%, which is greater than the state average, but is there anybody else in the state of Ohio, as far as the Big 8, that's doing better than 10%? And are we actually looking at best practices of school districts outside of Ohio and what they're doing?
So we did actually look for data specific to other districts. They have there's data out there on different websites that are specific to the demographics of their students, but it's very difficult to get that data so easily, I would say. In terms of best practices, through CAMERA, we have these discussions around the best practices for minority recruitment. Quite honestly, minorities don't usually take the traditional route towards becoming educators. So some of the things that are happening now are very innovative, specifically the Educator Rising as a result of, and then even within the CAMERA group, we're kind of redesigning, restructuring how we're doing CAMERA. We had last year a job fair specific to minority recruitment, and we didn't have a great turnout. So now we're kind of reevaluating how we're going about recruiting, and within that we have the larger urban districts that participate in this. And this year, as a part of the committee that I'm on, we're focusing on our Educator Rising program.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry to ask these questions too. I have one more question. And going back to LEAP, the local access, equitable access plans, what is that data saying that our district which direction our district needs to go? Is it leading us in one way or another way, or how is it telling us or guiding us to move towards hiring?
So what is used is the equity assessment tool, and it's really the opportunity for the district to reflect on the areas that they're doing well or they need improvement. I wouldn't say that there's a defined percentage related to that. It's more or less of where you need to grow, and based upon the the equity plan for this year was a focus around diversifying. There are different components of it, one of them being diversifying the teacher or the pipeline. And we thought that this was a great opportunity to align our strategies to the equity plan, since it's already written within in terms of one of the major components that the equity plan is looking at. There are other areas that speaks to, just providing equity in terms of the types of teachers that are in the classroom. But as a district, or excuse me, with an HR department, we're just that piece of the equity program, plan.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. This was really, really helpful. And just a quick question about, once people kind of get into our funnel, we're casting this big net. Are there things that we're doing from an incentive perspective to help them say yes to us, to help us look different from other competitors, maybe is not the right word, but other schools who also want them? And are there other things we could be doing to be more attractive?
Oh, yes, sorry. So Julia had discussed earlier today, individuals such as ed assistants and secretaries have the opportunity to access tuition reimbursement. So that kind of spoke to our why behind targeting our high school students, specifically in academies. They're not ready necessarily to jump right into a four-year degree. Well, they have the option of attending or working as an educational assistant, going to Stark State, working on that tuition reimbursement, going to, for example, Akron U, and then graduating with a four-year degree within an area of education.
Any other questions, comments? Now, our college and career academy, one is at Bookto, is that not correct?
That's correct.
And the other is?
North.
At North?
Correct.
Okay. So we want to encourage our Bookto CLC students and North students to look at that as a pathway, and you're giving them several options. A student can just move into a student assistant platform or pathway, go to Stark State or some other school for the 2-year, and then go Akron U, finish and get their undergraduate, their BA or BS degree, and then be licensed as a teacher. So part of that grant is helping you to market that and to encourage the people that are sitting here, the people that are watching later on, so parents can see a way that they can encourage their child, if they want to move in that area, a very successful way, so they can be encouraged and not discouraged along the way, so that they can be successful in becoming a teacher. Okay. So we have that in place at Bookto and at North.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not gonna belinger things, but I just have to say this one last thing. We know that many young people will not be able to put the money up front in order to replace it later on.
Mm-hmm.
So are you guys thinking in terms of that, trying to find some type of support or to fill that gap, or is that something that you guys have on your radar?
Absolutely. So the goal of the grant is to do that for individuals that qualify, with the hope of this being somewhat of more of a pilot to see if this is a system that is applicable across the supplemental licensure, as well as the Grow Your Own with our students who could eventually become ed assistants.
Okay. Ms. Patrick and then
Correct.
Mr. Miller.
Given our relationship with the LeBron James Family Foundation, the I Promise School that we have, and their partnership with the College of Ed at Akron, are we perhaps, to Ginger's point, maybe working over there to see if we can't create an additional pipeline of students that may be interested there who may have more educational support, secondary, post-secondary educational supports than?
We are not limited to that. We wanted to make sure we had a focus specific to the grant so that we can kind of create the structure and the system to see how it might manifest itself across the district.
Sure, just a thought.
Thank you.
We put a lot of pressure on you guys, didn't we?
You sure did. Thank you.
This is great.
Good job.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add, I got my notes out from Cube, and it was Lancaster Independent School District, and I believe it was in Texas, but in my notes, I wrote down the district has 80% teachers of color, roughly 1/3 of all teachers are male, and they talked about how excelling in sports has been a recruitment tool for black male teachers, so whatever that's worth.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Want to thank our, yes. It may or may not work. Use your loudest voice.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just speak. I was in the military, so I guess. So I think first I want to say I think that the options that you have are pretty outstanding. I guess two of my questions revolve around sustainability and support. And so with your data showing that there's a 56% gap between the students that we have in our district who are students of color versus 10% are actually teachers of color, what support, additional support do you feel you need in order to make this sustainable? And then how many students in this, or teachers in this first year, because you said it's a one-year grant, do you plan on recruiting and retaining?
So in terms of support, we have written within the grant the ability to be able to provide such individuals with mentors. So and the candidates will kind of be in an in-between place. They're not teachers, but they're staff members. Our teachers typically receive resident educator mentors when they're in their first couple of years of teaching. So we wanted to ensure that they still have support even though they weren't fully certified teachers throughout their process that will kind of monitor their route towards obtaining the alternative licensure as well as the professional license. And then we wanted to ensure that we were going to acronize the process so that all of the supports that are provided to such candidates are specific and similar to what is already happening for our teachers in the districts. Things similar are specific to like classroom management, collaboration, in terms of POC. So by the time they finish, they have an understanding and they have a feel for what it means to be a teacher working in Akron Public Schools. In terms of sustainability, unfortunately, I have to go back to the point of our focus for the goal. We wanted to make sure that we had a system in place. Our goal is to make sure that if we need to restructure that system, that we can do so that we're able to, obviously the grant is only $50,000, but we want to make sure that if we were going out and working to connect and partner with other organizations, that we have something in place that will allow us the freedom to do that.
And how many teachers? Or?
How many?
Yes.
6.
Any other questions or comments? Want to thank our HR department.
Thank you.
Ms. McVeigh and the staff for your wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. This time we need to approve our regular scheduled meeting minutes for November the 4th.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
At this time, we'll hear from our superintendent.
Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of personnel recommendations presented in categories 5 through 16.
So moved.
Been
Second.
properly moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Next, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the resolutions and motions presented in category 21.
So moved.
Been moved
Second.
and properly seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
And finally, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the business affairs recommendations presented in Category 23.
So moved.
Been properly moved
Second.
and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Superintendent's report.
No report this evening.
No report. President's report, we'll make some comments during the, after the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. I passed out tonight, as I guess forewarning, at my previous reports, we were going to be talking in the finance section about potential school levies. And I handed out the Ohio School Board's Understanding School Levy Guideline. There's a few highlighted sections to that I'd like just to draw your attention to. A few definitions there on the first page about what's a mill, inside or outside mills, effective millage. More importantly, on the second page is the House Bill 920 factor that's in the Constitution. We've been speaking a lot about that as it relates to House Bill 305. And then the types. And so the majority of the time, just tonight, talking a little bit about the common types of school tax levies. A general levy or current expense is what Akron Public Schools has historically passed. Very supportive of the community, Akron has always passed a current expense continuing levy. There's never been an emergency levy. There's never been a temporary levy. So it's always been a permanent current expense. So it would fall under that first type called general levy. I did highlight two other sections there. Dual purpose, where you take a single ballot issue and you combine it with a current expense and a PI or a capital needs. And then an incremental. In Ohio, there's been a little bit more development on incremental levies and growth levies. I didn't highlight the growth levy for a reason I'll highlight here in a second. Incremental levy is where you take a specific millage amount and add it on each year over the life of the levy with a maximum of a 10-year term, and or you take a specific dollar amount each year that's included in the ballot initiative and you add that in. And the reason I didn't highlight the growth levy below that is, and did the incremental, is, as you know, since 2008, and I've been reporting on, property values have not been growing. So the only growth that we've received for our finances and revenue has been either from the state of Ohio or through our commercial industrial properties. We get very little growth on property value, which combined with House Bill 920, which limits inflationary growth, is why we come back to the voters about every 6 years on average. Now, we've extended that, fortunately, but that time will be upon us in the future. So, again, each one of my finance reports, I'll be bringing either timeline or levy information for you to study. We'll be taking deeper dive in Finance Committee, and then I'm sure after we turn the page into 2020, we'll be studying this as a board as the whole.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none. In addition to passing out some information, dates that we should consider and put on our calendar, some of which you already have, but also others that we need to begin to look at as we move forward in the close of this school term. As you know, 2019 is coming to a close and remains a busy time of the year for us, and board members and administrative staff and the Akron Public Schools. We have made adjustments in the board by the recent election, and therefore necessitates some things that we need to do. We need to fill a vacancy at some point, and so we will address that issue as well. You see that we have on November the 25th a board retreat, which will include all of our board members and, as needed, staff, superintendent, treasurer, et cetera. Then on December 9th, our regular scheduled board meeting. And then January 13th is the organizational meeting for the newly constituted board. And then if you can look at your calendars as a possible date, January 14th for new board member orientation. Hopefully to spend a large amount of time during that day to go over a number of things and then to go out and maybe visit various places in the district to acclimate our new board members onto those areas. Additionally, please keep in mind the following items must be completed no later than January 13th, 2020 at our organizational meeting. 1, is committee assignments. 2, appointment of OSBA trustee and an alternate. And then the appointment of a liaison to OSBA's Urban School District Advisory Network, Joint Board of Review members and alternates, NSBA Cube representative, cluster and ward liaison assignments. And it has been discussed in the past that this may coincide with the school year instead of the calendar year. We made some adjustments this year. And then establishment of board meeting dates for 2020. So reminders will be shared for all upcoming events. Please check your emails regularly for any updates. And if you have any concerns or questions, if you see Mr. Pendleton or myself. Also, in December, I will remind board members that we have, at that particular time, those persons who are desirous of holding an office would please let the president know so that we can begin that process as well when the board, newly organized board, meets in January. So there's a lot before us, and especially for 3 brand new, and possibly 4 brand new school board members. So there's a lot to take in, and we want to do the best we can in acclimating all of our new board members, including the 3 that are here and possibly 1 additional new board member. So we want to give them time to assess and then be ready to move forward in January. There's a lot before us in January that the superintendent and treasurer will be bringing to our attention in the retreat as well as board meetings, so that we'll be acclimated as to how we're going to move forward in all the things that we have. Are there any questions? Okay. At this time, we'll have committee reports, Legal, Contract, and Board Policy Committee.
We have our, sorry, wrong committee.
No report.
Okay, thank you.
No report.
Our, now Finance and Capital Management Committee.
No report. Our meeting's coming up as well.
Okay. And then our Instructional Policy and Student Achievement Committee report. I think we do have a report.
So if you'll look, we tried something different tonight. If you look in your board docs, attached are the updates that we usually put at your place, trying to be a little green. We'll see how it works. We'll see if you like it. If you don't, please let us know.
No.
Just because it's green. Again, the photos are everything, and the pictures of our students in there are fantastic. So please take a look at that. Just a few quick, I'll just grab one out of each one. There have been student industry field studies for college and career academy pathways across all of our high schools. And just to update, the faculty from Kenmore Garfield also went to First Energy for team training. Considering that they just came on as partners on October 11th, they are up and running as a partner, so that's fantastic. Probably everyone, unless you live under some kind of rock, knows that the IPS school, I Promise School, has announced a transitional housing partnership with Graduate Hotels. Very exciting news. We were national news again with thanks to LeBron and the LeBron James Family Foundation for that help with our families. And then just a quick update on the Family Resource Centers. We will be opening the new Family Resource Center at Helen Arnold very soon because the coordinator was just hired. Am I allowed to say the person's name, Ellen? Yeah. Okay. Her name, it's a her, right? Simone, okay. Simone Ellerson is the person, and she'll start on December 10th. So that's really great news for that. And then I had the great pleasure of having Mrs. McKettrick be able to attend with us, and she got to hear some of the update, and I wanted to know if you wanted to share some of the things that you learned on Tuesday.
I was fortunate enough to attend the instructional policy meeting, and it discussed the expansion of online courses so that the access is expanded so that students have the flexibility across the district to have a combination of a traditional delivery method so that they can attend a brick and mortar school with the delivery being done by a traditional teacher, or they can do online coursework or a combination of both, so that if they have scheduling conflicts and they can't quite fit that last class in, they can have it done online, or if they want that traditional classroom and school experience, they can have all their coursework done in a traditional brick and mortar building, or again, if they're having a conflict with one particular class that they just can't seem to fit in, then they can have that freedom or flexibility to have it done in an online setting. Or if we have our vulnerable students who have, for whatever a variety of reasons, can't quite manage the traditional classroom setting, then they can take all their coursework online. So it's that individualized ability for our students to have, again, that flexibility to make those decisions with their parents and guardians to what works best for them. So it was really enlightening, and it's good to see that district-wide they have, again, that flexibility and what works best for them.
Thank you. It was a great presentation, so.
Yeah, it was. Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. And we'll share more coming up, so.
Thank you. All right, at this time, any unfinished business? We do have new business.
Yes, Mr. President. Last week, I had the opportunity to visit with representatives from the Cleveland Browns about an attendance campaign. There are, I believe, 13 school districts that are currently in the Get to School, Stay in the Game attendance campaign. I know Pat Shipe, AEA president, and I attended a presentation at the Ohio 8 from Cleveland Municipal Schools. They're one of the first districts to go in the campaign, and looked at how it turned around their absenteeism rates in the district. In their district, they have, their metric is if you miss 10 or more days, you are on track not to graduate. In our district, we looked at it, and ours is 8 or more days we would like to see kids not exceed. And so Burgess and Burgess Strategists, they're the marketing and communications consultant that works with the Browns on the campaign. I am proposing that we work with Burgess and Burgess for the balance of this fiscal year, an amount not to exceed $50,000, and then the Browns will give us their materials, the messaging and all that for free, and then we're also working on a more long-term agreement with the Browns to get some of the incentives for our students, whether they're tickets or having players come to the district, or having students go to the Brown Stadium in Cleveland for different events. You know, they were really pleased with some of the work that we're already doing. It really fits nice in what we're trying to do here. And we know that attendance is a barrier for some of our students, not all. And I think this is a good way of really attacking that problem. The campaign also works with Harvard University, with a group. It's called Proving Ground, so they really do a deep dive in the data. In our district, of course, we have Aaron Markovic, so we can do those deep dives ourselves. They were very impressed with that. And so I'd like a recommendation to at least proceed in this initial phase. There's money in my budget to take care of this through June 30th, and would recommend that we proceed. And we'll have a fuller presentation probably in January.
So we need a motion
Yes.
to approve that?
And that,
Request of
that
the-
motion would be authorizing a purchase order with Burgess and Burgess to do the actual campaign using the materials that the Browns and the collaborative have developed.
You've heard the request of the superintendent. What is your
So
feeling?
moved.
It's been properly moved
Second?
and seconded. Any questions or comments of the superintendent? Yes.
Just wanted to lay out a few things. We, again, got to do a deep dive. I told you we have the coolest committee. You guys don't believe me, but we really do. If you recall, when Dr. McWilliams-Woods did a report card presentation in September, she showed us a slide that showed the direct correlation, which seems obvious, right? That students who score the lowest on state tests have the highest numbers of absences. And those who score highest have the least number of absences. If you're in the seat, you're going to hear the news, right? So one of the things that I like about this is that it doesn't just involve the Browns, which is great. I love that it involves the Browns. It's fantastic. But it also works with our families to help improve awareness of the students and their families about the importance of strong attendance and why it is why they need to be there, and it's to recruit the entire community to help support our young people to have strong attendance. So they're the catalyst to build that support. Ginger, you want to jump in there?
Basically, a superintendent just did
Yeah, he did a
the
lot.
whole presentation. But I just wanted to say, like, over like the last 3 years, each year, for the people who participated, the districts or schools that participated, their attendance, their absenteeism went down 10%. So that shows some value in having the program and being a part of it. So we can decrease our absenteeism every year by 10%, just think. That would definitely reap some dividends for us.
Any other comments?
No,
Thank you very much. It's been moved, and do we get a second? It moved and properly seconded. Go on through the questions and comments. Roll call?
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Reverend Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we do need to go into executive session per our revised code 121.22G1 for the purpose of considering dismissal of a public employee or official of the school district, and G3, to meet with the board legal counsel to discuss disputes involving the board and/or school district that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. And so I need a motion for us to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, a roll call?
Reverend Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, we will adjourn up into our normal meeting place.